Right. Hi, everyone. To those watching on Facebook and those watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. Today, we are continuing with our sessions with the regional chairs. So this time around, we have the regional chair for IAPS USA and Canada, Siddharth Satish. So we will be hearing from Siddharth about their experience, about their journey into political science, and also, of course, their vision for the upcoming mandate. So Siddharth, welcome.
Hi, Reon. How are you all doing today?
We're doing great. So I think I'm just going to jump right into it. So if you could maybe share a bit about your experience into the political sciences, the current field that you're in, and how you entered that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are a couple of different avenues that really sparked my interest early on within political science and political advocacy in general. And I think the first is perhaps just the political situation from the country I come from, India, and kind of the political divide I noticed growing up. And being in a mixed caste household, which is when you have two different caste systems in India that kind of propagate this idea of predetermined societal status, I got to witness firsthand what is typically known as caste system bias within the country. And, a lot of countries are, seeing the existing systemic infrastructural problems within their own nations. And I think this is one that India has recognized, but has never really tried to solve. And the tangible impacts are really manifested poorly on the children and people growing up. So growing up in a mixed caste household, it was just a lot of tension overall in society, not being from one or the other. And that type of ethnical purity was very valued in the country. And I think that was the first instance where people who were trying to obstruct rights that we hold dear is something that I began to see as a major problem. And then, slowly as you become more aware of the political situation, you realize that just realizing a problem exists isn't enough. You have to do your part in beginning to solve it. So I think that's where, the entrance into political science, analyzing these different structures, hierarchical powers, and how they come into existence was particularly important for me. And I think the second experience that really, really solidified my movement into this was also just, growing up as an immigrant in the United States and seeing kind of all of the policies that Trump era just decision making and the White House did, as well as, greater policies banning hijabs and things of that sort, really obstructing the right to religion within the country. So I think the manifestation of all of these coming together, just to show that there are existing inequities that not only impact me, but the people around me that I care about, really, really just solidified my segue into political science, because I thought of it as a field not only to kind of be an advocate, but also to understand the situations that exist in the status quo. And I think that's particularly important and something that, I'll probably allude to throughout the course of today's meeting, is the fact that, understanding the issues, I think, is much more difficult than beginning to solve it, because a lot of people have a very surface level understanding, whereas I think, moving into the roots of a cause and understanding why things evolve the way they do and human psychology and how that connects with politics is particularly important as well. And I think that's where political science was particularly alluring for me.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's quite interesting to hear that sort of common theme of the personal is political. I think many people who enter the political sciences do so because of some kind of personal experience. So thank you for sharing that. And then just generally your journey into IAPS. Obviously, you hold a very important position as the regional chair for the US and Canada. So what was your journey towards that position into IAPS?
Yeah, so I learned about IAPS just through surfing online, and I ended up finding this organization as this sort of coalition of student leaders and advocates coming together, not only to further kind of their understanding of political science, but also to impact that out to more people and more students across the world. And as soon as I kind of noticed this, I was like, I want to get involved however I can, whatever I can do. And it was quite very late in the year, very late into the previous mandate, that I kind of learned more about IAPS and about this opportunity. And I'd reached out to the chair at the time of USA and Canada, and was like, how can I get involved? What are the things I can do? And given that this was after, the initial elections and there was no real leader for USA and Canada, there was a lot of questions about like who was going to fill in the position, the by-election, and things of that sort. And being someone who's really, really new to IAPS, it felt rather intimidating that I should probably go in for a regional chair position without having too much of background in the organization itself, not in political science, but just in the organization, knowing its structures and ins and out. But I really, really wanted this like division of USA and Canada to really continue and have a lot of people behind it. And I thought this was like the perfect way to get involved if I really wanted to be, the sort of self-proclaimed advocate and political science enthusiast that I say I am. Right. And I think that's the way I kind of segued into IAPS. And it's been really, really awesome in terms of the support we have, in terms of the engagement we have. And I think USA and Canada has a really, really big potential to also play in the global narrative of things, but also give space to others in other regions, which I think is also important, because I think, for a long time, certain areas have a lot of political and economic capital that gives them greater amount of control over the conversation. And one of the major things that I want to kind of, act on, and I'll probably get into this during later questions, is just restraint as kind of a leader of, a really big political hegemon in the international field. But I think the combination of like just learning about the organization and seeing that there's spaces that need to be filled segued my journey into IAPS.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it is personally very interesting that someone from the Global South, being from the Global South myself, now heads up the USA and Canada IAPS. So I think that's very exciting. I think it shows the diversity and the versatility of the organization. So my next question is going to be particularly about students in the US and Canada, obviously noting that there are many foreign students studying in the US and Canada. So I think perhaps if you want to speak from that perspective, just generally why students in the region, both those who want to go study in the US and Canada and those who are born and raised there, should seriously consider political science as a legitimate field. We know the field gets a lot of slack sometimes, but why would you, in your opinion, really advise any sort of young person who comes to you and asks, should I consider this field? What would your advice be?
I think particularly the slack that comes from the field is surrounding, once again, misunderstanding of what really political scientists do and what the field entails. And I think the first kind of step towards understanding this is a really, really important field, not only for people to learn more about, but also to get involved in, is to understand the impact it has on society. And I think this is like one of the major things that people ask me also is like, why political science? It feels like, really abstract. It's not tangible like you would say biology is, or another type of physical science is. And I think the intangibility is part of the reason people go into political science, and part of the reasons I would advise people to go into science, political science. And that's only because all of the things that you talk about, that you theorize about, are intangible because you can't do anything, but it's already been manifested in society. So it's really a conversation about the tangible more than anything else. And people are always obsessed with creating tangible things, when in fact, political science does the same, but just in different ways. And I think the second thing that I would really say is political science is a necessary prerequisite for anything else to really, really function. Because if you don't have political stability, you're not going to have any other fields really, really progress in society. And having a fundamental understanding, even if you're not going to be, the next president of a country or prime minister, it's still particularly important, just because knowing like the way in which politics influences your position, your role as not only a civilian, but also as a leader in, let's say, the healthcare sector or the actuarial sciences, is really, really important because A, it impacts your job, impacts how you kind of live the next few years, but it also impacts your personal life and the way your rights are protected, the way you are protected. And I think the third reason is political science stems from this understanding that all people have a stake in the conversation, which I think is far too often overlooked. because you don't have to like 100% decide political science is the field to you for you to get involved in an organization like IAPS, for you to, you know, if you just engage with the topic on balance, because really understanding different dynamics also helps you kind of take out the political rhetoric that's present in modern media and really understand, you know, what candidates stand for, what your elected leaders stand for. And I think it's like a generally agreed truth that, you know, voting and getting involved in the political atmosphere of your own country is important because A, it impacts you naturally. You know, if someone's campaigning openly against rights that you're particularly fond of or rights that really impact you, you obviously want to secure them and get them out of the election. But also, secondly, it's just being a aware citizen that I think political science teaches you. So there are three different metrics, I think, to evaluate it. And political science, I think, once again, gets slack, not only because it's misunderstood, but also people just take it for granted, right? It's like a necessary thing for anything to function in society. And I think if you really want to be someone who understands the world from a greater perspective, political science is the first step towards doing that.
Thank you for that. I think those are some very great points. If I was a first year, I'd be convinced. So I think I'm just going to jump over to the Q&A quickly, just before I continue with my own set of questions, because I see we do have a question. So I see one of the questions that we received on Facebook that's been sent through our technical team is, how are PhD courses in international relations with special reference to the Indo-Pacific in the US and Canada? Do you have any ideas on that? Now, of course, I know you're not necessarily a course advisor, so you don't have to answer it specifically, but perhaps if you do have experience in that, that would be useful.
Yeah, so can I just get the question maybe in like written form, because I missed a little bit of it?
Yes, let me quickly drop it for you in the...
Awesome.
Ola, can we send it to the... Okay, it's been shared in the general chat.
Perfect. Yeah, I think with relation to just like, you know, first preface, I am not a course advisor, as Reon said themselves. I really just have an understanding of the field, relatively amateur, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I would say that courses, just, you know, higher study courses within the US, really, when they specialize, have a great amount of focus put into them if they have tangible consequences on the world and if there's a product you can produce at the end. I would say that like Indo-Pacific relations, especially in the US and Canada region, they're obviously wonderful universities in like, you know, both of these countries. But I would personally say that, you know, doing more research on what particular program you're looking for, what you're looking for as a, you know, academic is also important, because some PhD programs here funnel a lot of money that give you stability, but may not give you the necessary amount of movement as a researcher because you're locked into certain projects. And other programs may not funnel in that much money, but you have a greater amount of mobility within your research. And, you know, with like the Indo-Pacific relations between USA and Canada and those schools, there's a lot of focus on colonialism and colonial structures and how to break those down. So that's going to be a big portion of the discussion, which I assume you already know if you've asked that question. But it's also important to consider whether you want to talk about the past history or focus on future Indo-Pacific relations, which I think, you know, a few courses would be offered compared to like colonial structures in the United States and Canada region. So it's just like thinking about those different characteristics are important. But I would just say like there are great universities here that can cater to your needs, but there are great universities all over the place that probably fit everyone's needs in a different way. So as long as you get your needs met in a PhD course and know what you want, I think any region can be good for you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I think that was a difficult question, so I appreciate the answer. But thank you for the person who asked that. I think just moving back to your role as the chair of the region, there's obviously a lot that you can do in a single mandate, but obviously you're probably not going to get to all of it just because of reality and time, and we're all students. But there are things that we're going to prioritize based on what you want to achieve. So if you could achieve one thing in your mandate for the IAPS Canada and USA, what would that be?
I think it definitely would be just expanding the amount of university partners and university students involved in the region. I know recruitment is like a big thing for all organizations, regardless of whether you're small, big, or medium sized. But especially in the USA and Canada region, I think there's a lot of untapped potential to be realized, especially with IAPS, because a lot of people try to create new infrastructure within their own schools and communities. And I think that's like a really daunting process to engage in. But if you have, a thing that's already created, an organization that's made and here to support you, like IAPS is, it really streamlines the process and makes it much easier for you. And I think people don't realize that as often or as soon as they potentially could. And that's what kind of hinders them from actually getting involved and actually getting into IAPS. And I think that's one thing that I want to revitalize, especially given the huge volume of diversity present within North America, within the United States and Canada, and the schools that exist here. And really make sure that they can get involved, not only because it's a great opportunity, but it's also the continuance of something that future people could get involved with as well. So I think it really has a spillover effect if as a team, the USA and Canada team, were to accomplish this part of the mandate as soon as we can.
Right, thank you for that. I think the last question that I have is maybe just if you have any particular events or programs that people can be on the lookout for. I know obviously you don't have to give all the details because they might still be in planning phase, but any interesting things that people can follow you on Facebook and the other platforms and keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I would say that any events and things that we do will be obviously posted on Instagram, Facebook, at IAPS USA in Canada and those platforms. But one thing that we're actively working towards is having this type of general panel discussion on what IAPS has to offer for university students to kind of do a recruitment seminar. So definitely be on the lookout for something like that. And behind the scenes, we're also working with organizations like the US Youth Peace Coalition. We recently signed stuff for the Afghanistan, things that are going on within the nation, for US congressional action over there. And we would definitely be looking for like greater support in case we have to do op-eds or writing in the future, which definitely I say op-eds and things in the future because we're still planning them out. They're not 100% set in stone, but we definitely plan on hosting a seminar to discuss more about IAPS and get people more involved with IAPS sometime really soon, probably towards the start of the semester.
All right, so anybody who's interested in that should keep an eye out. As was mentioned, there is the IAPS USA and Canada page, and there's also the general IAPS page, which is also on LinkedIn for those who are interested. Siddharth, thank you so much for your time today. I don't see any other questions from our technical team, so I think that's it for today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You too.